What's up, squad? It's your Squid, aka the Anxious Squid, here at Anxious Squid Productions. These guys are my patrons. If you don't know what Patreon is, click the link in the description, you'll find out. I would like to turn some of your money into mine on a monthly basis. It's the quickest way for me to make money, so that would be dope. But yeah, you already know what the title and the thumbnail are, because you've already seen them. But this video is about the NASCAR playoffs are worse than you thought. It's a slap shoes video. Everyone tells me to react to slap shoes, so here we are. I'm going to get into it. Let's do this. I'll see you after the jingle. Thanks for clicking on the video, guys, whether it was the title, the thumbnail, whether you're subscribed or not subscribed. Thank you for being here. Let's get into it, right? It's a new slap shoes video. I understand a lot of people have beef with the playoff format for NASCAR because it's not how any other motorsport works in the entire world. So let's check out the video. Let's see what Slappy thinks. Slappy? I don't know. Let's call him Slappy.
Okay, so before I begin on the main thesis for this video, let me ask you a question. What is the point of a year-end championship in any sport? Now, the answer to this might seem so obvious that you probably
So who's the best over the year?
Just uttering it out loud. Clearly, it is to determine who the best team or player in a given sport was that particular season.
Yeah.
Easy. But the methodology in determining the champion varies from sport to sport. Perhaps the most fair championship format in any sport
Stanley
would
Cup.
be the English Premier League, where the champion is decided by points. Every team faces every other teams a few times at home and away.
I like the Stanley Cup better. I'm just throwing that out there because it's a best of 7. Anyone can win on any given day, but best of 7, and then you're in the next series and it's a best of 7. Then you're in the next series, it's a best of 7. You know what I mean? I think the Stanley Cup is one of the best trophies in sports and the best like methods of awarding it, if that makes sense. But I'll stop disagreeing with him. I'll shut up and
Perhaps
listen.
the most fair championship format in any sport would be the English Premier League, where the champion is decided by points. Every team faces every other teams a few times at home and away, and you get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and 0 points for a loss. Whoever has the most points at the end of the season wins the title. While this system pretty much leaves no room for doubt as to which team was the best in the league that year, it can feel a little bit anticlimactic, as it's easy for the best team to clinch the title weeks before the last days of competition. So most sports opt to use a playoff format. You have a regular season where teams face off against as many different opponents as possible, and then the ones with the best record go to the playoffs, a tournament-style bracket.
Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Throwing it out there, I know people think he's people aren't a fan on him. I reckon people are sleeping on him, right? It's tonight. I'm hoping I'll get this up before the game goes live, right? So I can watch it and I'm not editing and stuff. But tonight, as I film this, later on tonight, it will be the Bills against the Steelers. The Steelers have only lost 1 game all year. I am predicting the Bills will beat them. You heard them here. You heard it here first.
You fight through the bracket until just one team is left and all is settled. But playoffs aren't perfect. Some teams take advantage of the format and get way further than they should due to a few favorable matchups. And every once in a while, a team that should have been eliminated early ends up winning it all. But therein lies the balancing act that all sports have to pull off. At what point do you sacrifice the fairness of a sport for entertainment? The more chaotic you make it, the more people might be interested in watching it. But the more chaotic it is, the less legitimate the champion seems. Playoffs are fun, but rather arbitrary for a sport like, say, baseball, where you could play every other team in the league 5 times and still play fewer games than they do right now. But what happens when a sport goes full send on the entertainment factor of its championship and throws aside any legitimacy it might have had before? Well, there's no need to speculate because NASCAR has already done just that.
Savage! Savage!
The NASCAR playoff system began its life in its first iteration in 2004 with the chase. Previously, the NASCAR champion was determined by a straight-up point system.
Makes sense.
The more points at the end of the season was the winner. The higher you finish in each race, the more points you got. Simple as that. The idea behind the creation of the chase was that in order to make the final leg of the 36 race season more entertaining and draw in a bigger TV audience, after 26 races, the points would be reset, and only the top 10 would be placed in the chase. Those 10 would be the only ones eligible for the championship, and the points leader at week 26 would be given 5 points above second. Second would be given 5 points above third, and so on. It was controversial when it was introduced, as it was obvious what NASCAR was trying to do. Make a point system that guarantees a compelling points race to drum up interest in the closing weeks of the season, where they now have to compete against football for ratings. And despite all its detractors, that first season went well. Jeremy Mayfield had a clutch win at the cutoff race to just barely squeak his way into the chase.
I mean,
Kurt Busch narrowly...
It's an interesting argument because they have to do something, right? Because, I mean, this was my first year following NASCAR. NASCAR. And as a result of all the lockdowns and everything, it's 2020. Google why we were locked down if you don't know. I imagine you're living under a rock if you don't understand why we were all locked down in 2020. But I digress. I got into NASCAR pretty heavily, right? And then as soon as the football came back, I didn't watch another NASCAR race. And I felt bad, like it was nagging in the back of my mind, being like, oh, I wonder who won, or I wonder how that's going. And I had the notifications on my phone and stuff. But I agree, like I agree with the bigwigs of NASCAR that they've got to do something to try and entice the casual viewers of all sports away from football on a Sunday. I think maybe that's racing on a fucking Tuesday night or a Wednesday night or something like that. Not competing with that sort of sport, you know what I mean? But what do I know? So anyway, we'll get back into the video.
Avoided disaster to finish ratings. And despite all its detractors, that first season went well. Jeremy Mayfield had a clutch win at the cutoff race to just barely squeak his way into the chase, and Kurt Busch narrowly avoided disaster to finish just 8 points ahead of Jimmy Johnson and claim the crown. At the time, it was the closest points battle in NASCAR history, but fans put up
that was Kurt Busch. I'll have to check that out
because the chase had pretty much manufactured this as intended. But after a year or two, the system began to get exploited. By the time we got to the end of the summer, the playoff field was pretty much set. Guys were locking themselves in early, and then they would just kind of cruise around, not really racing hard and just waiting for the playoffs to start.
That's boring.
Johnson and Chad Canals broke the chase system over their knee with a sickening crack, as they would essentially just use the first 26 races as a testing and tuning session, lock up 10th in the points, and then turn on the jets in the final 10 races. They won the championship 5 seasons in a row from 2006 to 2010. And by the time 2011 came around, a worrying trend had emerged. Ratings were down, not just in the chase, but across the board.
Yeah.
If this was supposed to draw in new fans, it was not working.
So what they were aiming for was, we want more casual fans at the pointy end of the sport, and what actually occurred was all the actual hardcore fans were like, don't fucking change something that's not broken, you know? Like, how about appreciate the people that are here instead of trying to get the people that aren't, you know? But, and I can see both sides of that. That makes sense.
2011 championship battle, in which the most consistent driver all year by a wide margin, Carl Edwards, was edged out in the final 10 races. Tony Stewart had been garbage in the first 26 races, going winless and had just barely limped into the chase. He was so bad that by the time of the Bristol night race he had said, guys, if we somehow make it into the chase, we are only taking a spot away from somebody who actually deserves to be there.
Wow.
And Tony Stewart took full advantage of the points reset, cobbled together 5 wins in 10 races, and tied Carl Edwards in the point standings at the end of the year. The tiebreaker, whoever had the most wins. Tony had 5, Carl had just 1.
Wow.
So now the chase was a crapshoot. You could flounder around all year, but so long as you could put together a good final 10 races, you could be champion, making those first 26 events pretty meaningless.
Yeah.
NASCAR and the media never seemed to put it together. By trying to make things more interesting for the championship, NASCAR had sacrificed the weight and meaning of individual races in the regular season. Wins are fun, but ultimately they don't mean as much as they used to.
This is good analysis.
Of the year. So people just had more of a reason to completely check out. But in 2014, NASCAR doubled down on the format with what we have now, the playoffs. The chase field was originally 10 drivers, but then it was expanded to 12 in 2007, with 2 wildcard slots given to whoever was outside the top 10 but had the most wins. But for the 2014 format, the field was expanded to 16 drivers. That way NASCAR could do a knockout style of playoffs. The first 3 races of the playoffs would be the round of 16. After those 3 races, the top 12 in the points would advance. 3 races later, the top 8 in points would advance, and after another 3 races, we would be whittled down to just 4 for the last race. Highest finisher of that race wins the cup. Sound confusing? Well, we're not done yet. We now have
not too confusing
system. Win a race in the first 26 events to lock yourself into the playoffs. Likewise for the championship rounds. Win a race in the round of 12, for instance, and you can automatically advance to the round of 8. There are also
that's a bit confusing, but okay.
Of every race in the regular season that count towards your total in the playoff rounds. So now there's 2 points.
Yeah, that's very fucking convoluted.
If you have to pause this video and rewatch it to understand what I'm saying right now, don't worry, I had to go back and make sure I had all of it right, because even I, a diehard NASCAR fan, can barely keep up with it.
Thank you, because I was about to pause it. I won't bother now, but thanks, Mr. Slappy, Mr. Shoe. I don't fucking know.
Good luck trying to explain this to any layperson. It's so bad that NASCAR had to hire celebrities for an ad campaign just to clarify how the hell it all works. And all throughout this playoff format, ratings continue to tank because of one very basic
look at those
thing.
damn lines. That's a slope.
It was just way too big. We have 36 full-time charter teams.
That looks like all sport is suffering a hit at this point. Like, let's
tank because of one.
Ratings growth from 93 to 2017, averaging by sport. Like, people are just watching less sport as well. That's crazy. Looking at that stat, that's intense. Why are people watching less sport? Well, probably with the advent of like Netflix and online other online mediums and things that can grab your attention. That's an alarming graphic for a sports lover, don't you think? Like, I wonder what the next 3 years look like. Since I'm going to Google that. I might put it up here. Let me actually. Will I Google it right now? No, I won't. I'm recording a video. Someone remind me in the comments section to figure out sports statistics and viewing and stuff, because that grabs me as worrying. You know, like, what are we going to do to get people into sport more?
Thing. The playoff field.
Like, when did the PS4 come out? I don't know. Fucking
way too big. We have 36 full-time charter teams and 16 playoff slots. That's nearly half the league qualifying for the title. When the MLB announced that they wanted to expand their playoff field, fans quickly let them know on social media that it was a bad call. And many even cited NASCAR as an example of why expanded playoffs don't work.
Makes sense.
In 2020, due to the virus,
I'm looking at a curve on that ball.
Playoffs anyway to deal with the shortened season. And ratings went down. Shocker, I know. Sanctioning bodies seem to have forgotten one very basic thing. People don't watch playoffs because they're playoffs. People watch playoffs because they want to watch the best teams competing against each other. The only way to expand the playoff field is to bring in worse teams and thus have worse games where we all know the outcome far ahead of time. The better team usually wins, and those wildcard teams more often than not don't make it too far. The first 2 rounds of the NASCAR playoffs are spent eliminating drivers who we know have no hope of winning the Cup.
Yeah.
The first 6 of 10 races in the playoffs are spent doing busy work, and people just stop paying attention. Plus, the win and you're in format is just begging for middle-of-the-road drivers who snooker a win to fill up tournament space, only so they can be eliminated early. And with that system, there's no incentive to race hard once you've locked yourself in.
Yeah, you win a race.
Work for drivers to slog through, and they in turn just kind of wait the season out. The only thing stopping drivers from just staying at home and sleeping in on Sundays is a rule saying that drivers have to attempt every race throughout the year. But NASCAR plays pretty fast and loose with that rule, as there's always some mid-season chicanery that throws a wrench in the system. In 2015, Kyle Busch was injured in the first week at Daytona.
Oh, rough.
He took several weeks off to recover, got a waiver for NASCAR, won a bunch of races, got into the playoffs, and won the Cup. A guy who didn't even...
People have told me about that. I'll have to do a video on it.
Championship at Daytona.
So I'm like... I have a roller coaster sort of relationship with how I feel about Kyle Busch. Sometimes I think he's a wanker. Sometimes I think he's unfairly criticised. Other times I think he's a good family man. And times after that I think, man, you're a bit of a wanker. But yeah, you know what I mean. Like he's I don't know if I like him or not, but I'm going to have to focus on that season specifically, I think, as well, and see the comeback. Because I think he broke his hip or something, didn't he? Like he did something and something off-field happened. Like he and his wife were trying for a baby but couldn't get one, and then they did. I don't know. Let me know in the comments section. Kyle Busch fans, tell me about this season and stuff. But yeah.
Took several weeks off to recover, got a waiver for NASCAR, won a bunch of races, got into the playoffs, and won the Cup. A guy who didn't even compete in all the races won a NASCAR championship. Absolutely unthinkable in the era before the playoffs.
Yeah, fair enough.
For any motorsport, that is just insanity. And in 2019, Ross Chastain, who had no intention of competing in the Truck Series full-time, got a waiver so he could compete in the Truck Series playoffs when a full-time ride opened up for him. And Tyler Ankrum missed the first few races of the season because he was under the age of 18. Once old enough to compete at the big tracks, he was granted a waiver. Well,
good on him.
Just because.
Good on the kid.
NASCAR just hands out waivers like candy, and attempting all the races is more of a suggestion than an actual rule at this point.
Yeah, fair enough.
That same year, Matt Crafton won the title
not fair enough,
not
but
winning a race.
Fair enough.
A system that was specifically designed to emphasize winning above all else gave the Truck Series its first winless champ. And don't think that was just a freak accident. In 2014, the very first year of the playoffs, Ryan Newman was in the Final Four despite not having won a race all year. And at the last race, he was one pass away from taking the title from Harvick. Had he been passed after that, he would have been the Cup Series' first winless champ.
Wow.
That very first season should have told us that this system was not going to work. All of this eats away at the legitimacy of the sport. We all know what's happening here. We're trying to get those Game 7 moments. But when you have a system that is so contrived that it creates those outcomes all the time, they cease to be special. Game 7 moments are only memorable because they don't happen that often. When you have them all the time, they just sort of all bleed together, and now none of them are special.
Yeah, that's fair.
Kevin Harvick, who had an absurd average finish in 2020 of 7.3 and 9 wins on the year, said, "These championships aren't like the ones Petty and Earnhardt won. I'd rather go out there and win races." And if he doesn't care, why should we? Ratings have stabilized in 2019 and 2020 for the regular season races, but the final 3 races of the year are still in a tailspin. These are the money races. These are the Game 7 moments. And fans just...
That backs up my experience as well. During the lockdown, massive increase in NASCAR views. they were the only sport on for a while, to be fair. So, like, if you were craving some sport and you wanted to watch something, anything, I'd watch marble racing. I did watch marble racing, in fact. There's a channel. I'll put it in my videos that aren't mine but are still good playlist. There's a whole channel of just fucking marbles on ramps. I watched that and I loved that shit at the same time as I was watching NASCAR because there was fuck all else on, right? But then as soon as football came back, I was like, well, football or NASCAR? Football, you know? And so that's why I think... Personally, I think they should just fucking race on Wednesdays, but you can tell me why that wouldn't work in the comments section below, please, because I'm sure it wouldn't. If somebody like me, who is naive and not even a full year into enjoying the sport, can go, why don't you just race on another day? Obviously, there's a reason why they don't. Otherwise, they would have thought of that already, but...
Don't care. But the playoffs do something more insidious than just chipping away at the legitimacy of the sport. It's actually encouraging poor performance from the drivers. Throughout the chase and the playoff eras, the average finish of the champion has steadily gotten worse. I average out all the average finishes of the champion every year since 1990. And since we put a bigger emphasis on winning at certain times and not stringing together a good season on the whole, the year-long performance of NASCAR champions is getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
But take a look at this. The best average finish
fucking great analysis.
Has remained relatively unchanged. Guys are still putting together solid seasons. It's just they're not getting rewarded for it. Under the old Winston Cup format, average finish was usually a pretty good indicator of who was going to walk away with the title. From 1990 to 2003, the guy with the best average finish walked away with the cup all but 4 times. Those 4 drivers who didn't were Dale Earnhardt, Mark Martin, and Mark Martin. We literally just got done talking about this. Just give me a minute.
Buddy
Okay, that's better. Where was I? Oh, right. In the Winston Cup era, average finish had pretty good odds of determining who would be the champion. But in the playoff era, the best average finish has corresponded with the eventual champion only 2 times.
Wow.
Truex in 2017 and Kyle Busch in 2019. The other 5 out of 7 times, a far worse driver took advantage of the format and snookered the cup from somebody more deserving. But I can already hear the playoff loyalist in the comments. So what? You have to win where it counts. If you can't perform when it matters the most, you don't deserve to be champ. You know what? That argument might hold some weight if it weren't for the fact that you can actually win a race by sheer frickin' accident in NASCAR.
Yeah.
Racing is just way too chaotic to adhere to that mindset. You're not just competing against one other driver. You're battling nearly 40 other guys and gals all at the same time. There's way too much that could go wrong.
And
one
the
person
conditions
could have a grudge against you and take you out. You could get caught up in somebody else's mistake. A mechanical failure could sideline you. Hell, even the weather could kneecap you. Just go ask Justin Haley how much weather affects racing. So long as we make the championship hinge on a single race at the end of the year, it becomes almost inevitable that weather will play a factor one day. If a race gets past halfway and it can't be restarted in a reasonable amount of time, then whoever was ahead at the point of caution will be the winner. Now the final race is moved to Phoenix, so you'd think a race in the desert would make this a non-factor. But just this year in 2020, just an hour or 2 after the last race was concluded, rain moved in and drenched the track. Hell, in November of 2015, Dale Jr. won his final race at a rain-shortened event in Phoenix. Motorsports is just way too chaotic to have finales like this. At least in the old points format, if it came down to the final race, you could always say you had all year to get ahead and build yourself a cushion, but you didn't take advantage of that. But in the playoff format, any cushion you could construct is unnecessarily demolished in the pursuit of entertainment. There's too much that could go wrong in motorsports. The only way to bring any semblance of order to it is in the aggregate. You might get lucky once or twice, but you are not going to get lucky 36 weeks in a row. The laws of nature and mathematics just won't allow it. The more races you run, the more apparent it becomes who the best driver all season is. The only system that makes any sort of sense is a year-end points total. It's almost like the people who built the points formats in motorsports in the 40s and 50s knew what they were doing.
Almost, right?
You may like the playoff format as it stands right now, but I implore you to reconsider. This isn't a matter of opinion anymore. This isn't just me bitching and complaining into a mic on YouTube. This is an undisputed fact. The playoffs are actively hurting the sport.
Yeah, definitely.
If the playoffs were supposed to maintain interest and keep old fans, it failed. If it was supposed to draw in new fans with added drama, it failed. If it was still supposed to crown a deserving champion, it failed. If it was supposed to make races more interesting, it failed. What do you call something that has not achieved a single one of its stated objectives, and in fact has done the opposite?
Hell, don't go hard. Don't go.
There is simply no other word to describe the playoffs.
Go hard, mate. Go hard. Don't go easy on them. That's what I was trying to say. Great analysis.
Complaining without offering up a solution ultimately serves no purpose, so let me offer up a fitting alternative.
Yeah, tell me how it would be better, Slappy.
Points format has no place in
Mr. Shoe.
But complaining without offering up a solution ultimately serves no purpose, so let me offer up a fitting alternative. Many have said that a year-end points format has no place in the current day, that it's outdated and would never work. But I disagree. Call me a boomer, call me a purist or a traditionalist, but literally every other motorsport in the world has this format.
Yeah.
It makes sense because it provides order to the chaotic world of auto racing. At the end of the day, you dance with the one that brought you to prom. The year-end points format brought us to the highest of highs. Maybe it could bring us back and rebuild the dam of legitimacy.
You dance with the one who brought you to prom.
To fix the tailspin of popularity that NASCAR is in, that ship sailed years ago. But it could help right the sinking ship. My solution is to absolve the playoffs and go back to the Winston Cup points format, with a few fixes. First, I want to give a bigger points payoff for wins. Back in the day, wins were treated just as what they were, one position above second. The differential between first and second was the same as between fourth and fifth, 5 points. For my format, I'm putting 10 points between first and second, then 5 points between every other position. If you win, that's 200 points. If you finish 39th, that's 5 points. And then one final point for 40th, as a thanks for showing up consolation prize. But I'm also bringing back bonus points. 5 points for leading a lap, 5 points for leading the most laps, 5 points for winning the pole on qualifying day, 5 points for the fastest lap of the race, 5 points for the fastest 4-tire pit stop of the race, and I'll even keep stages around for 5 points for first, 4 points for second, and so on. The only difference is I'm not throwing a caution for stages. That way we can encourage pit strategies and keep the normal ebb and flow of a race.
Nice.
This system not only encourages drivers to race up front all year, but all throughout the race as well. With so many points available, it'll be
he's good, isn't he?
when strategies get cooked up in the crucial
That's a good system.
Now, is this system perfect? Of course not. No system is. But it is far and away more fair than the current system and not full of silly bullshit. Plus, it's got a pretty good track record. So many of NASCAR's problems today stem from trying to reinvent the wheel. So for once, let's go back to what worked. I mean, what else do we honestly have to lose at this point? It couldn't hurt. Anyway, I'm Slapshoes. Thanks for watching, and until next time, y'all take it easy.
Fucking A. Thanks, Slapshoes. That's good. Return to tradition. I like it. I like it. That's good. I'm going to hit the right button to get this to stop. That's good. That was a long video for me, but it was good. I really enjoyed that. Sorry about backpedaling and going back and forth. He makes stuff make sense. Slapshoes is a really, really good content creator. If you, regardless of whether you like watching videos like that without a reaction or whatever, click the link in the description. Go and give Slapshoes a subscribe. Go and give him a like if you haven't already, because he is an awesome content creator. I like reacting to his stuff, but that makes a lot of sense. I hope they do what he says as well. I hope they revert back, because it makes sense. Everything he says makes sense. I'm going to go now and Google if all sports are still declining 3 years after that graph, but after that, I'm going to edit some videos and I'm going to upload them and stuff. This has been fun. I just bulk filmed. I filmed a whole bunch in a row, so hopefully you enjoy all the stuff I upload in a spree tonight. Hopefully I get them uploaded before the Bills game. Bills Steelers. I think the Bills will win. These guys are my patrons. Please consider becoming a patron of mine. I like money. I spend it on stuff, and I can spend more money on stuff if you decide to give me your money in addition to all of these guys. Your name goes on the list. You get guaranteed reactions at certain tiers, and yeah, stuff. So give it a look. Click the link. You know how it all works. And yeah, I'm going to get on with my day. I'll see you guys when I look at you. You'll see me when you look at me. Thanks for watching.